will now recognize the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all of the witnesses. Let me be very clear of the importance of this hearing, and I will concisely take the ultimate reason, though over the years we have looked at the questions of voter registration, machines, cybersecurity, all important issues for this very focused committee on Homeland Security. But the real issue is in the aftermath of the 2020 elections, wrapped up in the big lie, and the continuation of the big lie is really the question of threats to the physical security of elections, with an increase in threats to elections officers and a heightened risk of officials acting improperly due to disinformation. That is simply what we are facing in our ability to really carry legitimate elections that are guided by, as the previous witness said, by the laws of the state, and not guided by misinformation, disinformation, and violence. That is what we're facing. I was appalled at the threats of the elections officials in Atlanta, in Georgia, in the last election, still unchecked today. I'm appalled at the state laws that have criminalized anyone trying to be a good Samaritan with a glass of water. So, Mr. Talise Oliver, let me ask you, as relates to election officials' protection, funding often does not reach its intended target. What is hindering those funds from reaching the election official? Mr. Oliver.
Congresswoman.
It's Madam Oliver. I'm sorry. Is it Secretary?
That's okay. I just want to make sure you meant me. Yeah, Congresswoman, I think there's a couple of issues. I think first and foremost, one of the biggest challenges we have, for example, in my state, and I know many of my colleagues have shared similar concerns, because the funding that we've received so far, which, by the way, we are incredibly grateful for, and I will never stop thanking you all for what you have allocated to the states to help in our work, because it has come sporadically in lump sum payments, and we don't necessarily know when or if there will be more funding coming. We've had to be extremely diligent and thoughtful about making those funds last as long as possible to sustain the programs that we've built around election security and cybersecurity. So often that means we are holding on to funds at the state level, waiting to see what we are going to continue to need in the future, because we can't necessarily count on that additional funding. And then, Madam Congresswoman, I know that some states, like my colleague in Minnesota, for example, when the federal funding is allocated, he then has to go through the approval of the state legislature. And that timing doesn't necessarily align for when those funds are allocated and when the secretary can then get a hold of them.
Thank you. I've got only a short period of time, so I see the logjam that we need to address. Let me ask Ms. Howard, again, on the question of election security and the attack on election workers. I think your testimony mentioned that election workers are simply leaving their positions. In my time as a public servant and going before the voters, it was an honor to be engaged in the election process. What are some of the things that we can do immediately to help fill these positions, as well as prevent more workers from leaving? I'm now in the midst of a Judiciary Committee hearing trying to ban assault weapons. I don't know, with this rise in gun violence, whether someone will think it's important for their position to come to a poll with a gun. What should we do, and how should the federal government be involved? I frankly believe we should be doing a lot more with persons on the ground. Ms. Howard, thank you for your work at the Brennan Center.
Thank you so much for the question. There are several things that Congress can do. So first, Congress can allocate funding specifically for training for election officials about how to, for their physical safety, and they can allocate funding so that election officials can enhance the security at their personal residences. Congress can also request that CISA provide specific training to election officials to protect their personal security. In addition, Congress can work with the multiple federal agencies and departments that are working to help protect our election officials to make sure that their efforts are effective.